You know, I keep thinking it's over, and then it's not. Before we get into the lawsuit details where we learn what exactly caused this whole Subnautica 2 situation, and why Krafton apparently sabotaged the game, we'll take a look at a statement from Damon Lee, Krafton's ex-head of investment, who closed the deal with Unknown Worlds in 2021. Now, this is an ex-Krafton employee, but while they're not actively working at the company, Krafton is the main investor in their new company. Just felt like that was important to mention. Now, he says this isn't a company screwing over an indie dev, but that it's essentially a company versus 3 wealthy founders. And then he reiterates how much money they already got. He also then claims that Krafton would have adjusted the bonus formula to fix any negative impact on the devs by now, which is great if it's true. But, he then says Krafton isn't greedy and funds indie devs for very little in return. Bro, they made almost $2 billion and had a record all-time high profit last year. I think they get plenty in return. Now, he then says that he left the company and doesn't know how the relationship between Krafton and the founders broke down. But hey, we know now. And more about that later. And then he just says the same thing about the $250 million that we already know. Right at the end though, he says to reserve final judgment until all the details come to light. Which is good advice. Convenient that we now have the details on the lawsuit, huh? But before that, real quick, Danny the Danny on Discord let me know that Charlie has apparently said that he'd take a break from video games in April 2025 in his podcast during the Subnautica 2 development.
Now I'm taking a break from video games and working on a few different films and, kind of starting over.
Now, Donya also confirmed on the official Subnautica Discord server that the founders weren't working on Subnautica 2 at the time. Now, these obviously give a bit more credibility to Krafton's side of the story. So, is Krafton right after all? I don't think so. Charlie yet again made another post on Twitter and Reddit, this time linking us the full lawsuit details that he promised. Honestly, I don't know much about the law, but these are a surprisingly easy read, so I'll link them to you in the description in case you want to read the parts that I skip over here. Now, do keep in mind this is only one perspective, but this is a legal document. I don't think they would put anything in here that they couldn't back up with proof. Now, the lawsuit starts with a basic recap of all the events so far, which I won't go over again since I made multiple videos about them. However, it does say that Krafton sabotaged the launch by pulling key materials and refusing to follow through with crucial partnerships and reneging long-standing commitments to handle important pre-launch tasks. Apparently, even Krafton employees themselves said that this was for the purpose of avoiding to pay. We then get some more exposition on why early access is important to the company and how Subnautica 1 was made. I assume this is so the judge has the full picture. Now, the juiciest parts are sadly censored, like the formula for the payout, but I suppose that's fair. Now, importantly, part of the agreement when Krafton purchased Unknown Worlds was that they cannot fire any employees without the written consent of a majority of the founders, including the founders. I assume this is a core part of the suit. Krafton apparently also said that they wouldn't take any action which would deprive them of the payout, which probably is the second core point. Krafton then pushed the Subnautica 2 launch back a couple of times until we arrived at the recent 2025 launch date. Now, this is where it gets important. Charlie's title changed from CEO and design director to franchise creative director, which means he wasn't working on Subnautica 2 directly, but instead on Subnautica's cross-media expansion, as well as a Subnautica film. I feel like that's valid, no? I would love a Subnautica movie. Max McGuire's title changed from technical director to special projects director, where he would focus on research and development. And lastly, Ted Gill's title changed from president to CEO. Now, remember how Krafton said that Charlie and Max were asked to resume their duties as CEO and technical director? Yeah, they weren't not working, they were just working in their new roles that Krafton approved and apparently fully supported. And then they asked them to go back to their old roles, which they apparently declined. Where, I mean, fair enough. And the one person who is now the CEO is the one person Krafton didn't claim wasn't working. So I think they were just all doing their new jobs. So yes, Charlie was taking a break from games. From actively making them. He was still working on Subnautica 2, just now in the marketing and media landscape. This also says that the founders maintained an active role with Subnautica 2, driving its overall creative and commercial direction, and supervising the day-to-day team leaders. Now we then get a short summary of the good fan reception to the Subnautica 2 trailer, and then a description of how Krafton realized they would have to pay the bonus, and then started to lowball the developers. Unknown World's publishing colleagues also tried to finalize the marketing and advertising strategy for the Subnautica 2 launch, but when they came back, all they could report is that Krafton wasn't focused on a successful launch, but instead on how to delay the game. I wonder why. Well, they tell us. They said it's clear that Krafton was trying to avoid the payout. Then, Krafton's head of publishing told the developers that Krafton was trying to delay the game, but didn't seem to have a valid reason for doing so. You can't make this up. This is apparently when Krafton started claiming that Subnautica 2 wasn't ready to be released. Krafton then randomly decided that they wanted to assign a new publishing team to Subnautica 2. Unknown World's only requests were for Krafton to assign someone who has experience with early access titles, can work with the mostly American and European time zones, and speaks English conversationally. Krafton somehow managed to meet none of those. That's impressive, honestly. They apparently assigned someone who has very limited experience on releasing PC games, has just worked on the first early access title, were based in Korea, and didn't even speak English. How this can happen is so beyond me, I just don't get it. Krafton then apparently tried to seize control over the launch and make them delay early access. And then, Krafton's CEO apparently told Charlie Cleveland at lunch that if Unknown Worlds released the game on its planned timeline, so Krafton would have to pay the earnout, it could be disastrous financially and hugely embarrassing for Krafton. Krafton then again tried to get Subnautica 2's release postponed, but the devs were against it. And then the founders had to explain to Krafton how early access works for Subnautica, and that if you release the game in a too polished state, feedback from the players is basically impossible to implement. You'd think that was obvious, no? And then Krafton started heavily undermining and sabotaging the game. They issued an internal stop work order and pulled all of their resources from Subnautica 2. I mean, yeah, if you just stop working on a game, I guess it might not be ready in time. That's one way to ensure that. Jesus. Krafton also apparently pulled most of its corporate resources set to support the game's release. Like, for example, their marketing team. They then stopped responding to and paying the vendors, which means Ted Gill had to scramble to inform them, hey, this isn't our fault. Sorry. Krafton's localization team didn't continue translating the game. Krafton's analytics team didn't continue providing them with data and server infrastructure, their policy team stopped working on the game, and Krafton's legal team stopped preparing for the launch. And apparently, Krafton headquarters told all Krafton teams to stop all creative tasks related to Subnautica 2. This apparently resulted in Unknown Worlds losing several highly valuable promotional opportunities. And even Krafton employees apparently told them that this was purely to diminish the earnout. They then even seized control of unknownworlds.com and subnautica.com to post an quote-unquote apology for delaying the game and making people think that the founders had returned to their original roles. Krafton then tried to get the founders to accept a lower payout, which they obviously declined. And then Krafton straight up told them that they were planning to remove the board and fire the founders. So, knowing they may get fired soon and not be able to share their cut of the earnout with the rest of the team, Ted Gill, in a last-ditch effort, tried to negotiate for a lower cut for the founders, so the rest of the devs would receive more money. And Krafton, in response, fired them. And the way this is phrased also makes me think we were supposed to get Subnautica 2 this month, because looming implies it was very soon. What a shame. Now, people have accused me of being biased, and yeah, I am. I'm human. But I know Charlie, and I don't know the corporate entity that is Krafton. And one of those seems a lot more trustworthy than the other. Now, since this, Krafton has agreed to pay the developers their 25 million bonus, which of course is great. Until you remember that this is 225 million that Krafton still saves, potentially stops the community backlash, and they now get to do whatever they want with Subnautica. And again, the founders were planning to share their part with the developers. Assuming it's an equal share, this would mean that all roughly 300 employees would get $750,000 extra. Now yes, it's probably not an equal share, and most likely based on work hours or years working at the company, but that is still a life-changing amount of money. With Krafton's new payout, the devs get $83,000 total each. Or again, probably less if they've not been at the company long. Now to me, this just seems like an attempt to get back into the community's good graces, with the least amount of effort and least amount of money spent. So after knowing all this, I don't get how people can think that Krafton is now absolved, or that they didn't actively try to sabotage Subnautica 2. And yes, after seeing Krafton's reasoning, the leaked early access review documents, and this lawsuit, that's exactly what I think they did. Like, even if Charlie did lose interest in Subnautica and somehow didn't care for the 250 million or his employees of 20 years, all three of them suddenly abandoning their responsibilities, knowing Krafton was looking for a way to get rid of them, because they literally told them, and not caring for the $250 million payout? Sorry, I just don't buy that. If you offered me 250 million or even 1 million to dedicate myself to releasing Call of the Void, you can bet that that would be my top priority. So here's what I think. Krafton doesn't understand how Unknown Worlds does early access and why it's so important, and expected more of a pre-order level game. They didn't think Unknown Worlds would be able to deliver that pre-order level quality until 2025, and when faced with the reality that the game was going to release in 2025 and they would have to pay the bonus, which might make them look bad in their financial report, they tried everything to avoid paying. Now, on Reddit, they're somehow taking Krafton's side in all this, which I don't get, but it's Reddit, whatever. But you can let me know your opinion in the comments down below or on my Discord server. Let's hope Subnautica 2 doesn't suffer too much from this. Man, I was so excited for Subnautica 2, and then Krafton decides to screw it all up. Like, I genuinely believe that if Krafton had just let them do their thing, the game would be in a better spot now. Not just the game, the whole community. Like, we don't need this drama. I'm not even looking forward to making videos on this anymore, but I feel like it's important to tell people. Like, I just want this all to be over.